Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be looking at how both of my ant weights performed at ARC's September meet. So we're going to do both 2v2s and A-Leagues all in one video. This might be a bit of a long one. There will be links or time codes for each of the fights in the description down below. So, a couple of quick things to talk about before we get into these fights. First of all, the pits are going to be down permanently for every single fight for this entire event. Unfortunately, there was a malfunction in the pits before the fight started, so they were just left open for everyone for the entire event so that each fight was fair, basically. This does put us at a little bit of a disadvantage with a big spinning weapon because, of course, it means that there is less time for us to do damage before a pusher can push us down the pits, but that is the way that goes. Sometimes things break, and sometimes the things that break aren't the combat robots. So that is just a thing that happened. Also, I took a suggestion from a couple of you out there, and I put acetate, or what I think is close enough to being acetate, on This Is a Party. The only thing I could really find that is kind of acetate-like here in Australia is slide projector sheets. And as far as I can tell, that's kind of the same thing. So I put that on This Is a Party to try and out-wedge some of the people who were out-wedging me in the past. I also didn't really have time to work on either of these robots, so I kind of thrown back into the arena in the same state they came out of the arena last time round. So yeah, there's just a few things that would have been nice to have had fixed, but I have been rather busy. So let's move on to the fights because we have a lot of them to cover. First up, we have This Is a Party versus, I'm pretty sure This Is a Party's nemesis, which is Anty-matter, a very pushy little wedge. So there you go. Yeah, we ended up in the pits, which is yeah, what's going to happen to us with the pit open a lot like this. Yeah, we have to be really, really careful about how we hit people or things, and in that case, we weren't really in control when we hit the wall and bounced off into the pit. Also, I should point out, he wasn't dead at the start. That's why he wasn't being counted out. He was still active. He was just letting me maneuver around the pit rather than trying to come to me. So, I mean, that's one strategy, I guess. Yeah, he decided that he was just going to let me do the hard work of maneuvering around the open pit. So that's how that fight went. And yeah, the open pit does put us at a little bit of a disadvantage in this case. So, moving on to the next fight, we're going up against Baby Bot Bot, which is the ant weight version of Battle Bot Bot, which is a beta weight that I talked about in last week's video. So if you want to, there will be a link to that in the description. Go and have a look at that one. This one is the same thing. It is a kind of wired grabber. It's almost a dustpan without the dustpan in underneath. Let's take a look. Yeah, so that pit again, I mean, with the pit open the whole time, both of us were being very nervous around the pit and kind of trying our best around it to go kind of slow and all that kind of stuff. And of course, it was for good reason. That was a short fight. There's not really much to say about that one. So instead, we're going to move on and we're going to stick with This Is a Party, and we're going to talk about This Is a Party versus Tron, who is a flipper grabber style robot. So it actually has a scoop out the front that it can use to flip and lift, but it can also actually grab with that as well. So let's take a look. Oh man, Tron is one fast robot. And I was spinning the weapon on this as a party way too quickly at the start there. Mostly because the weapon actually needs a rebalance and I had not had time to do that. So spinning it too fast caused the whole bot to wobble, which was not good because even acetate's not going to save us when we're wobbling around all over the place like that. We got really lucky and got some shots in on his back wheel. We also did manage to get in under his front wedge there at one point. I think maybe the acetate helped with that a little bit. I'm not really all that sure. That could have just been luck. And yeah, we did rip off the front wedge and then we ripped off the top panel up in underneath his front wedge there, or where his front wedge was, and that exposed a battery. So that means, of course, that the fight has to stop. So for those keeping track, I think that's about 5, maybe 6. I'm not keeping track, but there's been a lot of robots that This Is a Party has won against because it has exposed batteries, which is quite cool, I think. Yeah. So anyway, now we're going to move over onto the 2v2s, and we are going to go up against some robots that we haven't ever seen before. These are Blue Fuzz and Tombstone. They're made by a new father-son team who, as far as I know, haven't competed at ARC before. It's certainly my first time facing them down, and they are kind of horizontal style spinners. Obviously, 2v2, we are back with Jaden from Raptor Robotics and his kind of grabber-lifter combo, Mr. BowJangles. Wow, so we won that one, but at a cost. Those spinners pack a serious punch to them. I think they may only be some form of like machined aluminium, but when they get up and going, they really do pack a punch to them. It's the first time Downforce here has had the rubber split away from the ABS up the top, which was a little bit concerning because the side that they split actually is where my battery gets housed. So I was this close to having a battery fall out and then being disqualified and having the match stopped. So we got rather lucky there. Also, these are the first people to actually hit any of the screws and stuff sitting up on top of the robot. All in all, it was a very interesting fight, and those are some really cool machines, especially considering, like I said, I haven't fought them before, so they're relatively new to the sport, and they've done pretty well with those two machines. So, having just been with Jaden and Mr. BowJangles, we're now going to fight Jaden and Mr. BowJangles, but this time with This Is a Party. He ran away from me at the start. Jaden, the pit was open. You could have just pushed me in. But no, instead he did a little dance and he kind of maneuvered around the pit away from me. Also, considering the last couple of fights and how those have gone, I kept the weapon low to try and avoid ricocheting myself into the pit. But it didn't matter. I ended up in there anyway, as you saw. So yeah, as you can see, this open pit for the entire event has really changed the way that everybody has gone about these fights, because everybody is driving differently and is, I think, more reserved in this competition than they have been in previous meets. So yeah, hopefully they can get the pits repaired between matches and we can have pits in the next round. But as I said, for this one, we just have to live with what we have. So This Is a Party is also not on much of a stellar record at the moment. We've got a couple of losses under our belt, which is not good in particular. Anyway, speaking of having finished that fight, we're now going to go over to the 2v2s and we're going to fight Brunhilde and the Force. The Force is a four-wheel drive lifter style robot and Brunhilde is an undercutter spinner with a nice hard ox blade. Let's take a look at that. I had drive issues for a lot of that fight. I think that one of the motors in here is going, and if I had had time, I would have replaced that at the event. However, this is the same event I had my Ultra Long Beetle XD at, and XD took up a lot of my repair time during the day. So these guys didn't really get much work in between fights. I did replace the acetate on This Is a Party a couple of times throughout the day, but that's not really much repair work. Swapping out a motor would have been a lot more repair work. So I just didn't, and just kind of had to, from this point on, deal with the fact that that motor kind of seizes up just a little bit from time to time. It wasn't affecting performance too much, unless of course it got caught as I was trying to jam somebody somewhere. That fight, of course, though, went to a draw because Brunhilde was really resilient. I was pushing him around here, there, and everywhere. And yeah, still did not manage to get him in the pit, which, you know, it happens, I guess. And the weapon performed really well. There was a couple of shots, or quite a lot of shots, that you didn't see because they were off corner of the camera, but I kept wedging him up and slamming him into either the Lexan panel, which is in that raised section, or into the steel wall, and forcing the weapon to stop by slamming it into the wall. And the weapon just kept going for a long time into that fight. And it only stopped towards the end of that fight because I think I was saying afterwards that there's a plate in under, so there's a weapon here and there's a plate, and this plate came loose and actually started rubbing against the weapon, and so there was too much friction for the weapon to get back up to speed, which, that's incredible. The fact that that worked that long and that well, it's a great machine, and yeah, they deserve to have that draw in there. So now that we've fought them, we're going to stick with the 2v2s, and we're going to do Smasher versus Forte. Interesting note, these two teams of 2v2 robots are actually all built by Steve, and they are him, his sons, and his father, as far as I know. Normally, his sons will drive Forte and the Force, but they split that up for this one. So Smasher is an overhead hammer robot that we've actually had as a 2v2 partner before, and Forte is a anti-spinner wedge bot. Hey, so we won that one, and thanks to Jaden on that one for basically taking a dive, doing a bit of a sacrificial play there so that we could win that fight, because of course he had the robot up in his little grabber, and it was just easier to drive himself into the pit and leave me out to actually get the win on that fight. That was a good fun shoving match, that fight. Well, yeah, for a big chunk of it, it was a good fun shoving match. I do enjoy some shoving matches from time to time. I mean, that is why I build wedge bots like this guy, because yeah, sometimes having a good driving match is a lot of fun. Although it would be nice if Downforce was actually working at full spec rather than having that kind of weird drive issue that you're starting to see come into play. So we are now going to look at This Is a Party's final fight for the day, or at least, sorry, final fight for the round robin group that he's in, and that is up against Bot Ox, I should say. And this is actually a complete copy of Anty-matter. It is the copy of Antimatter that they built to fight as a 2v2 robot, and then they put it into the A-League, and it just so happened that I ended up in the round where both Antimatter and BotOx were both in that round. They are driven by different people though, so they are technically different robots, so that's why they're allowed to be in the same round together, and that is why we ended up facing both of them. So you saw there at the start, I was having trouble getting past the pit on one side. That was actually because I put fresh acetate on right before this fight, and the acetate stopped me from going over. There's a tiny lip at the edge of that pit there, like right halfway between that pit, there are two plywood panels that make up the floor, and the lip between those plywood panels, it lines up with the middle of the pit. And the acetate got jammed and stopped me from going up that lip and actually making it to the other side. And I think that may have caused some issues in terms of like bending up the acetate, because the acetate wasn't as good in this fight as it was against Antimatter. And obviously they are practically the same machine, they're just printed in different colors. So yeah, I think that was the big issue here, was that the acetate got stuck on the uneven floor, and then it was just damaged and not as usable. So with that loss, by going into the pit again, Antimatter is now out of the competition, does not make it into finals, which is the first time in quite a while that Antimatter has not made it into the finals. So we're not going to place, we're not going to do anything, and I'm actually starting to think that this might be the end, or very near the end, for Antimatter. Sorry, not Antimatter, for This Is a Party. Antimatter, they're going to do whatever they like to do, but This Is a Party has been built for a while. I like building bots a lot more than the fights. The fights are good fun, and the fights are good testers and show me where the weaknesses lie in my design so I can build and iterate and do more stuff. But I haven't really had to do anything to This Is a Party for a while. I mean, the change to the wedgelets was the last thing we did, and that was 6 months ago plus. So I'm getting very close to the point where I want to retire This Is a Party and move on and do some other design. I've learned so much in the building of this robot that I'm really confident that I can make other designs that I've tried in the past. I can make them, and I can make them work, and I can make them work at the level that This Is a Party is working. So I kind of want to do that. It's just a time thing. If I have enough time between now and the next ARC meet, then This Is a Party will be retired for sure, and we'll fight something completely new in the next meet. If I don't, then I'm going to have to do a patch job repair on This Is a Party and hope that the pits are also fixed for the next month. But yeah, at this point in time, I really do want to try and retire This Is a Party. I know that there's a lot of you out there who really like This Is a Party, and it is a fun robot to drive and a fun robot to fight with, but like I said, I'm kind of getting to the point where I want to move on and I want to build something else. So now that This Is a Party is all wrapped up and done for the day, we're going to go back over to the 2v2s, and we have a fight versus Reaper and Antimatter. So Antimatter you've already seen in this video, and Reaper is a dustpan robot. So, there you go. That was another very heavy, shovey, pushy match. Those guys are good drivers. They drive their robots very well. And that's not much more that I can really say about that. I was having drive issues still, obviously, because I had not had time to fix downforce, as I have been saying. So, yeah, it was a good match. I'm amazed that I lasted as long as I did with the drive issues that I had. If I had my wheels fixed, it may have been a different match, but then again, it may have just gone exactly the same way. We did get outdriven a little bit there. Reaper in particular did a very, very good job in that fight. So that is a loss for the 2v2s. And then we have the final 2v2 fight, which is against Tron and Simple Solution. So Simple Solution is an interesting robot that has an anti-spinner bar mounted out the front of it, which is not going to be very useful against me and Jaden, but it is a very interesting design in general. So let's take a look at this fight. And we get the win in that one, which is good. That was, yeah, looking to be a pretty even match there for a while. The one thing that really surprised me in that fight, though, was Tron got some really, really good lifts on downforce, which is interesting because that fan blade in the middle does provide a lot of downforce and does provide a lot of suction down to the arena floor. So it should be a lot harder for him to lift me, but he was still managing to lift me pretty well. So I think I need to change some of the design here, make the base plate actually sit a little bit flatter and improve the interface. between the base plate and the rubber wedge, because I think that's kind of what's letting me down, is I've got a little bit of a gap here and I'm not getting the suction that I really should be getting out of this design. So I can actually probably improve this and make this a little bit better. And I think I might try and do that, or I might put it in the retired pile as well and build something else, something brand new as well. But once again, it all comes down to time, and I have a lot of projects on the go in the background at the moment. There's some big stuff happening. There's a lot of 13 kilo stuff happening in Australia around this time, so it is taking up more time from me than all of this other little ant weight stuff is at the moment. So yeah, there you go. And with that, that was the final fight for the 2v2s, and Jaden and I came second in our 2v2s, which is pretty good. I think because we had a couple of losses, or a loss and a draw or something, and the people who beat us had all wins, so it was very well deserved by them. Yeah, anyway, that is going to be a wrap on the September ARC meet. That is all of the fights that I did. It was a very hectic day. I had 4 robots there. I don't think I would be taking 4 robots again. It's a lot of work to keep 4 robots going and in the arena. And as you can see, I didn't even really keep them going all that well because, yeah, Downforce really needed a replacement motor and I just did not have the time to do that. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you in the next video.